this is, I mean, look at how big the lesion is, right? And you see this ulceration here, then this looks like pretty big. So if you cannot, it may have started as, no, it doesn't fit. Hyperplastic candidiasis? No, no. Try scraping it. You can do that, but it's pretty bad. It looks, look, it's pretty. It is a big lesion. It starts from here. So I think Jessica said, right, that is first of all, yeah, here. Let me. So you are right. It may have started as snuff pouch keratosis, okay? It must have started like that, but now it has gone beyond it. So you see, whenever there is a mixture of red and white, and with this kind of appearance, your top differential diagnosis should be squamous cell carcinoma. PVL is a good one too, but PVL you will only call if you see other areas of involvement. Okay, right now I am only showing you a picture of this area. PVL means proliferative verrucous leukoplakia. So unless you see multiple areas of involvement, we will not use the term PVL. Okay, so here you can put two differential diagnoses, the top ones, three of them. Yes, yes, Jessica, yes. Verrucous carcinoma is a good differential diagnosis here. Very good. Squamous cell carcinoma can be the second differential diagnosis, or first. I would actually put first squamous cell carcinoma because it looks ugly. There is more redness to it than whiteness. Okay, that is a sign of squamous cell carcinoma. More whiteness will tell you about verrucous, where the structure looks verrucoid in architecture. Okay, so the top differential diagnosis, it can be a squamous cell carcinoma, verrucous carcinoma, and maybe a metastatic malignancy coming to the jaw. Okay, so those three, but it is definitely a malignant process. So what kind of biopsy would you do here? You will definitely go for a biopsy in this situation, right? And what kind of biopsy are you planning to do here? You will do an incisional biopsy because your intention here is to only find out the diagnosis. Okay, after the diagnosis is established, then obviously you will go to the next step. Okay, so this is another differential diagnosis in red and white lesion. Okay, okay. Then how about this? So this is a lesion on the dorsum of the tongue, and median rhomboid glossitis. Okay, what is median rhomboid glossitis? Rabia, can you tell us what is median rhomboid glossitis? Iron deficiency anemia? No, it cannot be iron deficiency anemia because in iron deficiency anemia there will be redness all over. Okay, it will be all over. Okay, here it is, you see it is only located in the yeah, fungal infection. Yeah, so atrophic candidiasis, yes. Okay, so plain and simple, median rhomboid glossitis is a form of erythematous candidiasis. Okay, and so this is all candida, and then always it is superimposed by bacterial colonization. Okay, that's why you see the whiteness. Usually you will see the redness more. So this is a case of median rhomboid glossitis. And how do you treat it? If the patient is symptomatic, then you will treat the patient with antifungal. Okay, this is candida. Okay, now what do you see here? Let's talk a little bit about ulcerative lesions. These are the categories you should be paying attention to for the exam, okay? You can do more, but yeah. Okay, so what is going on here? See, interaction is good, okay? If I'm just talking by myself, it is not the best. What do you guys see here? Let me Corinne, can you A punched out lesion. Okay, but okay, punched. Rabia, can you describe it? I don't know why she's not trying to. Ulcer with rolled red border. What is it?
It's
Is that right?
yeah, sorry, my internet's not great right now. It's a circular lesion that is punched out. It's white with a red erythematous border with it looks like some swelling.
Okay. So that if you palpate it, what are you going to feel here? Look at it. It looks like it is involving this entire area. So
Mhm.
if I want three differential diagnoses from you, what are you going to give me?
Um, traumatic ulcer.
Okay, traumatic ulcer. This is not a regular type of traumatic ulcer, right? Look, if you palpate it, yes, Alison, you're right. So excellent, excellent. So Herman wrote no remediation. So okay, so this is what you are seeing. Okay, you are seeing. Okay, if she will listen, don't worry, I will be grading it. So here, look at it. Okay, so this is how you will be describing it. And you don't have to put white. Okay, now you have to see what you are describing. Okay, so Rabia, your approach was excellent. So this is actually yellow in color, right? You are looking at a deep seated ulcer. Okay, this is a deep seated, deep non healing ulcer. Okay, this is yellow in the center. And this area, when you palpate it, you will feel that it is attached to the surrounding area. So that is called indurated. Okay, that is induration. So if this is the condition, you will think of three conditions. Okay, the first one will be, and depending on the history of the patient, always pay attention to the history as well. If the patient is a smoker, then, and if I get the history that this is not healing, I'm going to put squamous cell carcinoma as my top differential. If the patient has no history of smoking and has is no other history or a weird history, then or let's say the patient has a sexually transmitted disease, then I will think of a microbial ulcer, an infectious ulcer. Okay, that infectious ulcer can be due to a deep fungal infection, such as, can you guys give me at least one deep fungal infection that may mimic like this, a deep-seated non-healing ulcer? Histoplasmosis. Excellent, excellent. Okay. It's blasto, Cal. It's not blasto. Anyway, I got it. I was just pulling your leg. So yes. So so it is, yeah. So histoplasmosis, blastomycosis, HIV related ulcer, or syphilis, syphilis ulcer can also look like that. So you have to pay attention to the history. Let's say now this healthy 25-year-old dental student comes with this kind of ulcer. Okay, no history of smoking, no history of any kind of diseases, no history of sexually transmitted disease, nothing. All is like dental school, the stress in dental school. Then you can put traumatic ulcer as your top differential diagnosis. There is a high chance that this student is going through a lot of stress and is biting on that area. Okay, so when you make the differential diagnosis, you will follow the history of the patient very, very carefully. I always look at it like that. If the patient has history of an infectious disease, I always try to relate it to an infectious ulcer. Okay. If the patient is a smoker, I try to relate it to squamous cell carcinoma. Okay. And if the patient does not have anything significant in the history, then I try to relate it to a traumatic event. Okay. Traumatic ulcer. So if you're thinking of a traumatic ulcer, we are not thinking of a regular traumatic ulcer. We are thinking of TUGSI here. And for your exam purposes, You cannot just, I will not give points if it is acronyms, okay? You have to say traumatic ulcerative granuloma with stromal eosinophilia. No acronyms will be allowed. Okay? Okay, awesome. You should know what COC stands for. Not COC is not going to help it. Okay, now this is another scenario. There is no history on the patient, but if you see something like this, what do you see here? There is a deep-seated ulcer here. It is on the palate. And remember, in oral path, location is very, very important too, right? So again, for this lesion, you will pay attention to the history and the duration of the lesion, okay? If the patient, if the history says, this, I was just fine, this started 2 weeks ago, and is related to some kind of traumatic event, whether it's a physical or a chemical injury, my differential diagnosis is going to be, the top one will be necrotizing sialometaplasia, okay? If the patient does not give a history like that, if the history says the patient has uncontrolled diabetes, then I will be thinking of mucormycosis or a deep fungal infection like that. And if the patient says, you know, other than that appearance, something else is going on, okay? If they have vasculitis everywhere, like they have red dots on the skin in the body, then I'm going to think about Wegener's granulomatosis, okay? So this is a representation of many diseases. Also, the tertiary, yeah, Guma, I was going there, Farzin, thank you. So the other one can be a Guma, right? Tertiary syphilis can also present like this. And a malignancy also, can anyone tell me the malignancy that is mostly seen in this? Very good. What kind of lymphoma? There is a very good, Roxanne, but what kind of lymphoma? Yeah, non-Hodgkin's, but what kind? It is a special type of lymphoma, which is called, this is a angiocentric T cell type of lymphoma, okay? And this is the most common location for that, okay? So then cocaine granuloma can also be like this. There are so many other entities. So you have to look at the history and then make a definitive diagnosis from there, okay? Just an example of an ulcerative lesion. Okay. Now let's look at this patient, okay? So I'll tell you a typical history from this patient is going to be, what do you see here? Can anyone try? Then I can lead you to who is the bravest of all?
Are his gums like spontaneously, like, what is the word, like sloughing, like bleeding and falling apart?
Yeah, see, that's what you see here. There's Cal, right? Yeah. So here you see that is what is going on here, okay? It can be Rabia, okay? Yeah. So very good, Myron. That is awesome. So at this point, okay, so at this point, when a patient comes to you, this is the presentation, okay? So they are going to tell you that, you know, my mouth, especially my gums, or anywhere in the oral cavity, but in this particular case, they will tell you, my mouth is so sore that it hurts, okay? And whenever I try to touch that area, I cannot brush because it starts bleeding everywhere. And this is the scenario. You see, this area is sloughing, okay? And this is the epithelium is out, and this is underneath the epithelium. This is the connective tissue, and the blood vessels are exposed. When you have a condition like this, you will first call it desquamative gingivitis, okay? Because you don't know what this is. Now, when you talk about desquamative gingivitis, you will start putting your top 3 differential diagnoses. What is the first one? Let me see if anybody remembers that chapter. Erosive lichen planus. No. So I'm not saying that it cannot. Yes. Wow, Herman. So why are you thinking of remediation? Okay. Yes. So, okay. Okay. So here, guys. Okay. So let's focus on this case. So what you do here, let's say this patient is in the chair. So at this point, okay, you will decide that this is a case of desquamative gingivitis. I am going to make a differential diagnosis of at least 3 entities. My top differential diagnosis will be mucous membrane pemphigoid. Okay, all of you are right. But because it is the gums or the gingiva, I would favor pemphigoid more than others. Okay, so I'm going to put mucous membrane pemphigoid as my top differential. Then I'm going to put erosive lichen planus, and then I'm going to put pemphigus vulgaris. Okay, excellent. Now, what do you do after that? You made that diagnosis. The patient is in pain. At that point, you will do a biopsy with immunofluorescence. Excellent. Yes. Now, in the immunofluorescence, what are you planning to see? So you will submit the specimen in Michel solution, and they will be looking at different antibodies, right? Autoantibodies, which are IgG, IgM, C3, IgA, and fibrinogen, right? So now if you see IgG and C3 between the cells, then we call it pemphigus. If we see it subepithelially, we will call it pemphigoid. And if we see fibrinogen, we call it erosive lichen planus. Okay, so it is very important that you do the biopsy first the right way in formalin and in Michel's, and then you will put the patient on topical steroid. Okay, so those are the top differential diagnosis. Follow that. If you remember that, you're good. Okay, and this is the biopsy specimen. So this is what you see in the H&E staining. Okay, so this is the epithelium. This is where the blisters are formed. Okay, and that's this area ruptures, and that's what you see clinically. And this is the immunofluorescent. Okay, and we have to know whether it's direct or indirect. And by now, I'm sure you guys know what is direct and what is indirect. Direct is you find the autoantibodies locally in the tissue. That's why this specimen is needed. We need this, otherwise we will not be able to see the autoantibodies. Indirect is done with the patient's blood. When you see circulating autoantibodies in the blood, those are positive in very advanced autoimmune conditions such as pemphigus, lupus, and so on. But for erosive lichen planus and pemphigoid, we do not have indirect immunofluorescence positivity. And as dental professionals, we only do DIF, okay, which is direct immunofluorescence testing. Okay, everybody good? So silent. Are you guys there? Okay. Okay. Now, this is another scenario where you saw this multiple ulcers. You can see here multiple ulcers on the palate. So how would you start this one? Lucas, you want to go and start this one? Okay, and what will you gain from there? Okay, they have HIV. So the patient is 45 years old. It started 7 days ago when they went to get a crown done. Anybody? It's not very common to see aphthous ulcers on posterior palate, right? Nope. Herpes? Okay, okay. So according to Myron, it's herpes. Okay, HHV5. Okay, what is HHV5? Okay, Myron, where are you? Can you turn your camera on? I want to ask you a few questions.
Hi, I'm here.
The camera is not working?
No.
You sure?
Yeah, it's like just gives me a message that I need to activate it, but it doesn't work.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, Myron. So tell us, why did you think it was herpes?
I was thinking possibly because sometimes it can be stress induced. Um, but we would need a little more information. Like I like the question that Jessica asked about the tingling sensation prior to the patient getting them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
So a question, one of your classmates asked about aphthous ulcer. Okay. So do you know the difference between, how would you rule out aphthous from herpetic ulcers? Do you have any idea? So aphthous, yes, yes, very good. And the location, right? The herpetic ulcers are seen on the keratinized mucosa, right? And the aphthous ulcers are seen on the um, movable mucosa. No, aphthous. Cal is asking if it is only single. Aphthous ulcers are only single. No, that's not right. Aphthous ulcers can be multiple. They usually are multiple. Okay, minor and major. They are both multiple. And can herpetiform? Yes, you're right. Herpetiform type of aphthous ulcer can be on both keratinized or non-keratinized mucosa. So how would you rule out herpetiform aphthous ulcers from herpes? Any idea, Chelsea? Prodromal signs and symptoms. Very good. Yes. So you will use prodromal signs and symptoms. With herpetic ulcers, the patient suffers from prodromal signs and symptoms. And at this, yeah. Also, somebody brought up Behçet syndrome. In Behçet syndrome, patients have multiple aphthous ulcers. They are usually everywhere, but they are the major type of aphthous ulcers. They are usually seen in the posterior areas. They can be seen anywhere, but remember, Behçet syndrome, the patients will have other lesions also. You know, there will be ocular lesions, there will be genital lesions, then there is arthritis and other features. So, and they do not look like this. They look like aphthous ulcers, much larger, and the location will help you to rule out Behçet's. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next case. Let's talk a little bit about herpangina. Yes, herpangina is a possibility, but yeah, they are mostly in the posterior areas. Yeah. No, no, no. It was herpes. It was herpes. Okay. Yep, Lucas, you got it wrong. No worries. Okay. What's going on here? So let's talk a little bit about masses and yeah, definitely. Definitely. So what do you see here? Let's talk a little bit about masses or lumps or bumps, whatever you want to call it. Um, bumps on the gums, yes. So any idea? And so when you see a lesion like this, see this is pink in color. I'll tell you how to approach this, okay? And you have to follow these guidelines for your differential diagnosis. Then you will not go wrong in this, okay? So here, what you see is this is pink in color. This is mucosa colored, right? So let's see what the histopath is showing. So here, look at the histopath carefully. So first remember, it is pink in color, mucosa colored. And then what do you see here in the biopsy specimen? Let me explain it to you. So this is not oriented right, but this is the epithelium. It would be the upside down. But you see this more pinkish areas I have focused here, right? So this more pinkish areas beneath the epithelium, this is the high power view of this area, is the bone, okay? So if a lesion on the gum looks pink in color, and shows bone here, and you will, if I only show you the clinical picture, you will call it the first differential diagnosis. You will try to the best of your ability. You will call it peripheral ossifying fibroma. Okay. And what would be the next one? It will be pyogenic granuloma, or it can be peripheral giant cell granuloma. Can it be something else? Yeah, sure. Can this be a peripheral ameloblastoma? Yes, it can. It can happen, but those are rare. Okay. So, or plain old fibroma. That's right. It can be plain old fibroma, but we always go by probabilities. Okay. And we will follow that to the best. So because it looks pink in color, if this was more red in color, I would first put pyogenic granuloma, and I will show you a histopath of pyogenic granuloma. Okay. You have seen all this in second year. And then if this was a peripheral giant cell granuloma, this would be more purplish in color or bluish tinge. Okay. So here, this is pink. And then in histopath, you see this right underneath the epithelium, this more pink area. And see, this is diagnostic of, this is a bone. When you cut it, it feels very crunchy because of the presence of bone. So this is an example of peripheral ossifying fibroma. Okay. Now let's look at another case. Now there is another here. And now you have to know between the three of these, okay, POF, PGCG, and pyogenic granuloma, POF happens only on the gingiva. Okay. Peripheral giant cell granuloma occurs on the gingiva and the ridge. And pyogenic granuloma can happen anywhere. Okay, this difference is, you should know the difference very, very well. Okay, and it is highly vascular. So here, see, it has slight bluish tinge to the lesion, right? And try to understand this. Here, look at this lesion. This has that purplish or bluish tinge because of extra vascularity. Okay, it is so vascular. And look at these cells. These cells are the multinucleated giant cells. So this is a case of peripheral giant cell granuloma. Okay, but what if you did a biopsy? Okay, and the patient presents with something that is intraosseous, that is in the bone. This is peripheral, that means it's only on the soft tissue. But I would do an X-ray to make sure that I'm not seeing a lesion that involves the bone, right? So I did, let's say I did an X-ray and I found that the bone was involved. And I did a biopsy and I see the same histopath. That means that is a central giant cell granuloma. Okay, so microscopically, both the central and the peripheral giant cell granuloma, they look alike, 100% alike. Okay, the difference is in treatment. The difference is in whether the bone is involved or not. Peripheral giant cell, you take it out, it's all good. Okay, but obviously central giant cell is more difficult. So here, but what I'm trying to tell you here is try to recognize these cells. These cells are showing you they are multinucleated giant cells. So bluish tinge, and then this multinucleated giant cells. This is an example of peripheral giant cell granuloma. Okay. Now let's look at this lesion. This is very red in color. It's on the gums. It can be anywhere. But what you see here is a random distribution of, these are all these small areas, these are blood vessels, and all these cells, they are granulation tissue. So pyogenic granuloma is just granulation tissue and blood cells, okay, blood vessels. So the histopath of each one is very different. Now the question comes, you have to make a differential diagnosis like that. So color, location, and so on. How would you treat it? You have to surgically excise them, go to the bottom of the lesion, completely remove it. Why do we do that? So that they don't come back, because all the three have a very high recurrence rate. So you want to go down to the periosteum and then clean it, curettage it. Otherwise, it's going to come back. So this is the histopath plus the presentation of the common masses or lumps. I'm not going to go into more. Anything can be peripheral or central, but these are the more common ones. Okay. Now, a little bit about odontogenic tumors, just the important ones. We don't have time for more than this. So I will not ask you about malignant amyloblastoma versus amyloblastic carcinoma. That is beyond the, this course level. But there are some that you should know what an amyloblastoma looks like under the on a radiograph, and what an amyloblastoma looks like under the microscope. Okay, Dr. Geist must have covered that. I'll show you some pictures. Adenomatoid odontogenic tumor is also an important one. It has some unique features. It is usually seen in younger patients, usually around an impacted tooth. And why is it called adenomatoid odontogenic tumor? Can anybody help me out here? Lucas? Glandular? Okay, yes, very good. It is called adenomatoid because it looks like it is a glandular. Okay, it's glandular, as if it's arising from glands. Okay, I'll show you a picture. So it is, and then some other ones. Odontogenic myxoma, which looks like soap bubble, and histopathologically what you see is it just looks like gel, like empty space and just gel-like. And I don't know if Dr. El Muradi, the students who were in Dr. El Muradi's group, if she showed you a case or not. I did show it to my students. It just looks like gel. There's nothing, there's no architecture to it. Okay. So let's look at some of the important cysts and tumors. So this is a representation of an adenomatoid odontogenic tumor. Very diagnostic, okay? Young patient, usually under the age of 25. Sometimes, patients till the age of 30 can also get it. So there is an impacted tooth, usually an impacted tooth, anterior region, okay? Eruption cyst is seen in very, very young kids, and then it looks like a hematoma. It actually looks like as if it's a collection of blood. Okay, so this one looks different. Here you can see, look at this. The eruption cyst does not look like a unilocular radiolucency like this. Eruption cyst does not exhibit this appearance. Okay, it actually looks like a radio-opaque shadow over the erupting tooth. Did that make sense, Herman? Did you understand? Okay. Okay. So yeah. So this is not the appearance. Okay. So if you put dentigerous cyst here, it's okay. But anteriorly in young age, this is the most likely diagnosis. Okay. Anterior, especially anterior, it has an affinity to happen in the anterior region. And then look at this. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but this is what glands look like under the microscope. These hollow areas, these are glandular structures, okay? And this is a high power view. This is showing you, it looks like a glandular structure. This is adenomatoid odontogenic tumor, okay? And then this is another lesion. You see, this is a large lesion, covering a lot of area, radiolucent area, and then I don't know if there's a histopath here. Oh, and there is a histopath here. So first, if I ask you a differential diagnosis just based on this, what will be your differential diagnosis? I already showed you the histopath, so yeah, obviously, yes. Yeah, so you guys, but I need 3 differential diagnoses based just on clinical radiographic feature. I know I showed you the histopath. So OKC, yes, OKC is a good mimicker, okay. Oh shoot, hold on, I did something. Odontogenic myxoma. Yeah, hold on one second. CEOT, yeah, that is possible. 1 second. With technology, you hit one wrong button and it's like, if it's getting too late for you guys, let me know, okay? This was the only time we could do this, so. Okay, so somebody said CEOT. CEOT, remember, will have calcification in it, okay? Did we have multiple choice? No, 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 it will not. I tried. Dr. Kashani said no. A group exam, out of question. Why am I putting all this effort? Come on, guys. Learn, it's important. Okay. No, you better not do that, Matt. Matthew, don't do that. You will be in trouble. No OKC business. Okay, listen. I'm trying to help you guys here. Okay. Don't be scared. Pay attention to this. This will help you, okay? Okay, if you hold on, guys, let me finish it. Otherwise, we'll be here till 10 o'clock. Okay, so, okay. You know, if you guys keep chatting, then I can't see the lesions. So, okay, here. So, amyloblastoma is a good one. Odontogenic myxoma is a good one. Can we, corona? Yeah, corona. No, I don't know about corona yet. So, okay. Okay, so odontogenic myxoma, amyloblastoma. I don't think that there is calcification. So CEOT is not a good one here, you know. Anything else? Anything that can be read. Mranj. Well, Mranj, don't put Mranj unless there it is in the history, okay? And this is too much for Mranj. Mranj does not show like this. There is no clear identifying feature of Mranj on X-rays yet. I know many things have been proposed, but we don't have too many. So anyway, let's go back here. So, but once you get this histopath, look at this histopath very carefully, okay? I have shown this multiple times. You see this is diagnostic of amyloblastoma. See how the end of the cells, they kind of go away from the base. This is called reverse polarity, okay? And the cells look like as if they're standing up, like picket fence, okay? So this is diagnostic of amyloblastoma. You should know the histopath of amyloblastoma and the other ones that I just spoke about, okay? Okay, now what is this going on? There's a radiolucency. What would be the third differential diagnosis? It can be central giant cell granuloma, but usually it's in the anterior jaw. You can put that in the, sometimes it can happen in the posterior as well. Central giant cell granuloma can be one of them. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, now let's look at this. This case here, this is a radiolucent lesion, okay? And what do you see here? In this, see there is a lining. So remember this, when you have a lining like this, that means you are looking at a cyst. Awesome, great job, Allison. Yeah, so this is the lining. So this is a cyst for sure. And look at these cells. These are cells, these pink colored cells. They are, but there is no architecture. These are ghost cells. So this is Gorlin cyst, calcifying odontogenic cyst. Okay, you cannot go wrong with this. This is the only cyst that looks like it. Okay, so this is the lining and then the ghost cells. Lining is a must. Okay, now look at this. It is calcifying odontogenic cyst. Okay, this is dentigerous cyst. Okay, so here you see this is very easy. You know, everyone knows. Here, this is about radiolucency surrounding the crown of an impacted molar. And again, you see this lining, right? This is inflamed lining. This is a dentigerous cyst. And then let's look at now look at this, same scenario, okay? Same scenario. This is also a radiolucency surrounding the crown of an impacted tooth, but this is the histopath, okay? This histopath, again, if you see a lining like this and something like this on the x-ray, that means it's not a tumor, you are looking at a cyst. and you have done this cyst multiple times, you know what this cyst is. This is called odontogenic keratocyst. What is unique about this cyst is, all the other cysts that we saw, you will not see this extra pink band here. This extra pink band and this strands of tissue here, this is keratin. Okay, that is where the name comes from, odontogenic keratocyst. So if you have radiolucency around an impacted molar, or a wisdom tooth, this here, such a well circumscribed one, you can put dentigerous. You can always put odontogenic keratocyst as the second one. In fact, sometimes if there is a history of it being there for a longer period of time, you can add a third differential diagnosis, and that would be a unicystic ameloblastoma. Okay, and most probably one of those is the answer. So it is not always the dentigerous cyst. It can be an OKC, or it can be a unicystic ameloblastoma as well. So that is why we recommend that if an oral surgeon removes the third molar, you submit the tissue in separate bottles so that you get the right diagnosis. It is not necessarily a dentigerous cyst. Okay, Lucas? Okay, now look at this. Look at this cyst. I called it a cyst without even looking at it. This is a cyst which has very, very typical features, okay? It can be huge, okay? And the patient sometimes doesn't even know that I have it. There is very rarely, even if, look at this, okay? Any area of the mandible, usually the mandible can be affected. This is a huge lesion, but the patient doesn't even know that I have it, okay? And when you probe into the history of the patient, like you have to do a lot of probing, then sometimes you will find out that the patient had a trauma in that area. And yes, it is a traumatic bone cyst. And look, that is why I showed you all those pictures. Where is the lining here? There is no lining, right? It is an empty cyst, okay? So this is just blood, this is just regular tissue, granulation tissue, and this is the adjacent bone. So this is traumatic bone cyst. In traumatic bone cyst, what it does is, if you look carefully, mostly this radiolucency, it scallops between the roots of the teeth. Okay, even if it is such a large lesion radiographically, clinically you do not see a lot of expansion, usually found as an incidental finding on the radiographs. This is traumatic bone cyst. So you make sure you ask the patient multiple times. After a lot of probing, you will find out, oh yeah, a few years ago, I had a seriously no differential diagnosis. If that is the situation, then yeah, you don't need a differential diagnosis. You tell me, Alexi. Cal already gave the answer. Ask Cal, he gave the answer. You were not paying attention. Okay. Now what? Okay, now let's look at this case, okay? Okay, so what is going on here? Can anyone describe this? What is going on here? Cal, you want to take this one?
Yeah, we have a unilocular lesion in the posterior body of the mandible that's resorbing the tooth roots, suggesting a more aggressive type of lesion.
Brittany remembered it. Okay, so yeah, this was a case that I shared with the students in my group. So here you can see, so this is a well-defined radiolucent lesion, right? And when you look carefully, there's another one here. So Brittany already gave the answer. So when usually cancers are, ill-defined, and they are, they're destructive lesions, but this particular malignancy doesn't show up like that. So it will show up as well-defined, multiple punched out radiolucencies, right? So what will be the other differential diagnosis, Brittany? How would you start it? You will not call it multiple myeloma right away, right? Brittany? What will you call it then? How would you approach this case, Brittany? You are right, you gave the answer. No? Okay. No. What background information? Okay, I couldn't read that. What was it? So, Cal, Brittany already said that she gave the answer, and I agreed with her that multiple myeloma. But at the first time when you took the X-ray, the patient complained of pain, right? And what do you expect the pathologist to call this? They will call it plasmacytoma, okay? And then you will do, for multiple myeloma, you have to do X-ray or bone scan of other bones to call it multiple myeloma. Do you guys remember multiple myeloma features? How would you confirm a diagnosis of multiple myeloma? What is multiple myeloma? Benz-Jones? Yeah, what is Benz-Jones? Spike? Yeah, but what is Benz-Jones? Benz-Jones is nothing. It's a
Immunoglobulins.
protein. It's a protein found in the urine. Yeah, in the urine. Okay. And what else do you find in the blood? Malignancy of plasma cells. Yeah. M protein. Yes, M protein, right? You will find M protein, which is what kind of immunoglobulin? That's gone, long time gone, huh? IgG? Okay, okay, very good. Okay, okay. So that's what it is. So you will ask for bone scan, you will look at this. Why is this relevant to us? What's the time, by the way? Oh, geez. Yeah. Bisphosphonates, okay? And we already did about bisphosphonates. You guys should know about that. I'm not going to go over that, okay? Okay, now just a little bit. This is our last slide. We don't have enough time. So can you tell me what these lesions are? They are different from each other. Okay, okay, so this is oral squamous papilloma. Okay, Herman said that. What about this, Herman? Condyloma, okay, and what is the difference between the two and why do we need? Yeah, right. Herman he didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, so why is the difference necessary? Different HPV infections? Not really. They are actually the same. They are the same types cause papilloma and condyloma. One is suggestive of a sexually transmitted disease, whereas the other one is not. Okay, and then the other thing is this is larger, multiple in number. This is a solitary lesion. Okay, so and just know the HPV types that cause them. Okay, so other than this, that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions that you, if the spelling is off a little bit, it's okay. But if it's too much, then yeah. No, don't worry about it. Okay, just word bank. No, I cannot post this. I really cannot post it. I just wanted to help you guys, and I think this will help you a lot. Focus on what I told you today, and that will. I think it's an hour long. So there are 10 questions. There are 10 questions, and each question is 10 points. Okay. So all the best. I'm sure everybody will do an amazing job. But if you have any questions, I can take it right now. And if you think you're all set, no, 10 cases, 10 cases. And then those questions will have, they are not multiple choice. You will have fill in the blanks and short answer. Yes, there will be histology on the exam. I already told you that. Yeah, there will be histology. And the ones that we have taught you, and we know that you will need it in the future if, if you're doing residency or something. But they are very common ones, very common ones. So you shouldn't have any issues with that. Okay. Any other questions? Can central granuloma look like a traumatic bone set? No, 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 it won't. Okay, Cassidy, the text went so fast, I didn't see what you said. If we get the differential mixed up, we will lose. It's just if we don't put the obvious one. Yes, if it is very obvious and you don't put the right differential diagnosis, then you will lose points. Yes. There was a reason why we did the seminar. There was a reason why we did the oral path course. And, when I did the seminar, I felt some students did not know, like Dr. Geis told me one student, when he was looking at a radiolucency around an impacted tooth, told him like it's a papilloma. I felt very bad then, like, am I not doing my job or what's going on here? So, yes. So if it is very obvious, then please.
So, Dr.
So
Oda,
bubble, yes,
sorry,
yes.
just to clarify,
ahead.
as long as we get the obvious one as number 1 and number 2 and 3 make sense, we'll be okay?
Well, they should also be in the ballpark. If
Right.
the first one is, yes, if the first one is very good, but the second two are like totally off, then you won't. But if they are in the ballpark, yeah, for sure, because we believe that you will make your decision based on the first one, what to do with the patient.
Okay.
Will the histopath? No, the histopath will not be described in words. You will have to identify it yourself. But they are very, very basic, okay? Epithelium, connective tissue, and, and I showed you some of them today. So pay attention to, will Piostomata vegetans ever have white? Well, no, Piostomatitis vegetans is pustular, so it will appear yellow in color. And if Piostomatitis is a case, if we give you a case, we will give you some hint that the patient has some kind of GI issues. Okay, we will guide you. Okay, then what was the question? Calcifying odontogenic. If there is no history on an ulcer on the palate, for example, can you put cocaine ulceration? Yeah. You will. There is nothing called cocaine ulceration. You will put it as cocaine granuloma. Yes, you can. Yes. If history says none, yes, exactly. So, yep. Anything else? What did you say it looks like? Oh, odontogenic myxoma. Bilal, it's odontogenic myxoma. Okay. Yes, it is on the lockdown browser. Yes. What? Yeah. Yes, it is on lockdown browser. You guys are used to lockdown browser now, right? Okay. So I think that information should be coming from Dr. Kashani. But so thank you guys. All the best. And I'm sure you will do an amazing job. Okay. But if you have any questions, you can email me. I will definitely help you out. Okay. All the best. You are very welcome, Lucas. Very welcome. So, I'm not good in typing, okay? But I want to type here, good looking, good luck. I'm tired too. I made so many exams. Oh my God. Good luck. You guys will do very well. Don't worry at all. Okay?
Dr. Oja, can you just confirm the
Yeah.
time of the exam again?
You know, it is done by Dr. Kashani. So I think it's 1 o'clock. But if you want, hold on 1 second. I will ask her right now.
Okay,
I'll text her. Let me see if she responds.
thank you.
Yeah, she did not send any announcement.
Not that I saw, unless she did it while you're having this review session.
Okay, because okay, I'm asking her. It is tomorrow. I know that much because I can't believe you guys are in fourth year. My goodness, how time flies, huh? Why? You are going to be graduating pretty soon. You should be happy.
It's
Yeah, right
especially
now that
scary if some of us are thinking dentidura cysts are, what'd you say? Myeloblastomas or something? What did you say? Papilloma.
yeah, it happens a lot. It can develop in pre-existing dentigerous cyst. A mucoep can develop too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when is the mock CDCA? Oh, Doctor guys, did he do that for you guys? The
What?
PAT? The
No, I think the DOR stands for like diagnostic based on radiology or something.
on radiology. Yeah, this is oral PAT.
So I think the DOR
Uh-huh.
one is the one with Dr. Geis that he gave the review session for like a week ago or so.
Oh, why can't they just combine the two?
Yeah, so are you going to have radiology stuff on yours tomorrow, Dr. Oja?
Yes, yes. That's why I showed you some of them. No, no, technique I
Right.
myself don't know. I don't know. What will I teach you? You can teach me the techniques. I have no idea. Oh, well, she's not responding. And then, um, if she responds, I think, yeah, she was supposed to let you guys know. I
There was
don't know about
one
that.
image sent around of a schedule where it said yours was at 10 and then endo was at 1. And then I heard somebody talk to Kashani and she said that yours was at 1. So I just want to know for sure, like, when is endo and when is oral path?
Oh my God, you better ask.
I know.
I asked
I
her,
was
she
waiting for
will.
an email all day.
Oh, I think she should have sent one. I mean, I always do. I didn't know that, but I'm not responsible for. I'm only the module director for oral path, so I didn't know.
I'll send her an
So
email right now.
yeah, but there should be an email from the course director. I
I
don't know.
looked.
With Corona, everything is changing.
Lucas, did you find an email from her? Okay.
Ask Alexi. Alexi left already? He told me 1 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. Hold on, okay? Let me try calling her. Let me see if she picks up the phone then. 1 second. Let me see. I thought you guys knew it's on lockdown browser. No, 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 no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, maybe she's having dinner or something. So you know
Yeah.
what? Yeah, I don't, so I have Alexi's number. You want, I have Cal's number, I think. Let me see. Cal. Oh, you know, I have Randy's. I have Randy's text number, Randy and Michaela's. They're my research students. So if Nahid tells me, I will let them know and they will let you guys know.
Okay. As of right now, we're planning on 1 o'clock.
Yep. That's what Alexi said.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Pay attention to what I did the review on, okay? Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you guys will be okay.
We just have to
Because
get
I'm,
70% to pass, right?
yeah, yeah. No, but go, I mean, aim for higher. Why 70%? Didn't we do a good job teaching? We tried very hard.
Yeah.
So, and then you will need oral path, you know, oral path is important. And if you do residency also, oral path is needed, you know, so.
Yeah. I think oral path is just difficult for me because it's not something you see every day. It's not something that you
That's
get a
true.
lot of practice with.
That is true. Actually, you know, the way our school curriculum is, oral path should be taught in third year as well. It should continue from second year till fourth year. That's how most schools do. Our school is the only one. It's our curriculum is so tight, like it's so many courses and stuff. But oral path is, and especially now with the new integrated national board, you know, oral path is tested at all levels. And you can, and as you said, you know, it's very easy to forget. It's so much material. So I don't blame the students. And so,
We should
but
replace some of our treatment planning seminars with oral path seminars.
you should put that on your exit interview. I mean, no, I mean, you need it. You will see. You will see. You need it. And if you are planning to do residency, oral path is a must. That is a CODA requirement for all residency programs. So, and you know, it's so much. It's so much. That's why I thought, you know, doing a review would be good for you because this you did like 2 years, you know, a year and a half ago. You will not remember everything.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to put. You guys will be graduated by then.